I want an expansion pack to the Doom board game. It's fun, easy to play, and more Doom is just more better. Luckily, with the amount of customization and how individual components combine to create individual scenarios for the game, it'd be pretty easy to make a new expansion pack and integrate new ideas into it. Now, I have ideas bouncing all over inside my head about how to go all about all of this, but I thought I would break them up individually, and focus on each of them for a different video. So with the first of hopefully a few videos, the first thing I want to touch on are new monster types. Now, there are a few monsters that were in Doom 2016 but didn't actually make it to the Doom board game. So let's look at each one. One monster that has been a staple of Doom since the franchise started back in 1993 were the Lost Souls, the flying flaming skull monsters that charge directly toward the player. Now, I think it's fair to say that the Doom board game mostly took after Doom 2016 and less classic Doom. And with that in mind, I think the idea of kamikaze flaming skulls just wouldn't really work very well. And to have them as anything other than that would really just make them flying, weaker pinky demons. They'd have less health and they'd get more damage for charging, but really that's it. So that's not a great first option. Another monster that didn't make it into the Doom board game was the Possessed Security. Now, I don't think that the Possessed Security was just quite different enough from the Possessed Soldier. You could maybe have them mechanically similar or even identical to the Possessed Soldiers, save for maybe special defense of 3 shields instead of 2, replacing the Overwatch and muscle memory abilities with some other ability that allows for more defense with an Argent Energy token, but at that point, they're pretty much just tougher pinkies with a little bit more range. To be honest, I just don't think that the Hellguards quite feel doomy enough, if that makes any kind of sense. They're really just giant rock monsters with worms at their cores, and that feels something more like Skyrim rather than Doom or some other generic fantasy setting. And that just doesn't really belong here, in my opinion. What about the Spider Mastermind? To make it relative to the video game, it would have to be bigger than the Cyber Demon, probably 3 squares by 3 squares. And I just don't think many of the map tiles have room for that. Besides, I'm good with just one giant boss monster in the game, and I do definitely think that the Cyber Demon is more of a sort of cultural standout or staple of Doom than the Spider Mastermind is. I don't think the Cyber Mancubus is quite different enough from the regular Mancubus to warrant any kind of new monster. Again, we're kind of getting back into the whole Possessed Soldier / Possessed Security discussion, and I just don't really see the point. Okay, so let's just get to it. The Hell Knight needs to be a thing. I think it can comfortably take up 1 square. If the Pinky, Revenant, and Cacodemon take up 1 square each, the Hell Knight can take up the same amount of space, and function like a mini Baron without the Grand Fireball. I think 8 health with a stagger value of 6 is reasonable enough, and a speed of 5 with a special defense of 2 shields. Obviously, being a melee monster, his range is only 1, with 1 black and 1 red die for damage. Now, for the special abilities, I think Beatdown is a good ability for the Hell Knight. Yeah, it's exactly the same as the Baron, but check this out. The Argent ability can be nasty if used right. You gain 3 movement points for this activation. If the defender was not adjacent to you at the start of your activation, the defender becomes stunned after your next attack. So basically, let's say you're 3 squares away from a Marine token. You can use your Argent ability to gain 3 movement points, get right up to him, and attack normally. Following that attack, the Marine player is stunned. Then, to make the absolute most out of everything, you can use Beatdown, foregoing your base speed of 5, to attack again. And that's especially powerful since he was stunned following your previous attack. This set of abilities really puts emphasis on the Marines being either far away from the Hell Knight before it activates, or being right next to him. It forces the Marine player to strategize more of their movement. In terms of overall power, it's probably somewhere in between the Pinky and the Revenant. Okay, so that's the Hell Knight. Let's move on to a monster that can definitely cause some stress for the Marines, the Summoner. It isn't that strong with pure combat, having only 6 health and a stagger value of 4 and just 4 speed, and attacking only has 3 range with 3 red dice as damage, but the chaos in the Summoner comes from its abilities. See, the Doom board game needed what can be considered a spellcaster enemy for all you D&D and Pathfinder fans out there. Its default ability is Teleport, essentially giving it flight like the Cacodemon and the Revenant, but also ignoring solid red lines, which isn't huge, but definitely handy. That Soulburn ability, though, is taken in spirit from the Archvile in Classic Doom. It uses an Argent Energy token, but doing so makes it so the Marine can only dodge the Summoner's next attack that round, ignoring all shield icons. And lastly, as the name implies, the Summoner can summon more monsters onto the board. It uses 2 Argent Energy tokens, but it makes it so you can summon from it as though it were an active blue summon token. For balance though, the summoner cannot attack for that activation. The overall power of this monster is probably somewhere around the Revenant, not just for the sheer combat, but because of the special abilities that it brings. Now before I move on to the next monster, I want to talk about something that kind of plagues the Doom board game. It is way too easy for the Marines, especially if you're playing the solo operative or the combat veterans. Almost every match I've played has been overwhelmingly in favor of the Marines, and with that, one of two things needs to happen. Either the invasion cards need to be stronger, thus rendering the deck that comes with the core game obsolete, or they need to add a new mechanic that better shifts the balance. Cue the new monster. Well, to be honest, you're gonna need to rework the invasion deck anyway with the new monsters, because none of the monsters in there right now have any Hell Knights or Summoners in them. I don't know, maybe you could just write a new rule that says you can swap out Pinky Demons for Hell Knights and Revenants with Summoners, but each invasion card seems to have something of a theme to it. Making monsters interchangeable could mess with the feel. I don't know how I feel about that, but everyone watching can feel free to weigh in on that in the comments below. But anyway, the last monster card could be kind of dumb, but I think it can work. The Unwilling. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would you have any monster that would be any weaker than the Imp? It would be pointless. Well, you're not completely wrong for thinking that, but that's why they would have to be implemented differently. Which is where I was coming from a minute ago when I was talking about a new mechanic. Unwilling are extremely weak, with only 2 health and rolling only 1 red die for damage. They have a speed of 2 and a range of 1. Now, here's the kicker. They activate every time any other demon type activates, so even though they don't do a lot of damage and they're easy to kill, they can still be a threat if there are enough of them and the Marine player doesn't deal with them. Now here's the interesting part. They spawn anytime demons spawn normally from summon tokens, and more of them spawn the better the summon token is. Okay, so remember, they're really weak. They only have 2 health, so they can be dispatched very easily. And check this out, they can be glory killed even if they haven't taken any damage. Now, that seems a little unfair, right? If Marines can take these out like they're nothing, then what's even the point? Well, this fodder ability prevents Marines from gaining glory kill cards when glory killing them. And remember, moving into enemy tokens squares still takes extra movement, so they can't just be glory killed for nothing. After all, they spawn with other demon types too. The Marine has to make more choices, either deal with the easy to kill zombie horde of the Unwilling, or attack the demons more head on. I think this new monster and mechanic can really shake up the game. Well, anyway, that's about all that I have for new monster types. Let me know in the comments what your ideas for each of these monsters are, or if you have ideas for other monsters that I didn't come up with mechanics for, like the Possessed Security or the Lost Souls. For the next video, I want to talk about the different Marine cards and how each of them lack any kind of real identity. But until then, I'll see you next time, and as always, happy demon killing! Luckily, with the amount of to create individual scenarios for Luckily, with the amount of customization and how components So the first thing I want to talk